Hello, everybody. I have to fix my hat. It's just... There we go. Oh, that's better. Welcome to Sunday Session with Margo. I'm going to start off, I'm going to take a note from Marin, and I'm going to read something from this book that we wrote. If you haven't seen it before. Indie Birth, A Story of Radical Birth Love. It's a good one. And I'm going to read you a section from the book that I wrote called Rebel while I wait for people to hop on. And then we're going to pull some cards and hope that Arrow doesn't wake up. Russell was supposed to come in from chainsawing, but it sounds like he's having too much fun. So we're going to let him keep at it out there. Okay. So one of my favorite bands growing up was Green Day. And I can remember spending hours in my bedroom listening to them on what I thought was a very grown-up 3 CD changer with stereo. These are some lyrics from them. She's a rebel, she's a saint, she's the salt of the earth, and she's dangerous. I was a free thinker in a closed-minded small town in Arizona. When I was 16, the Rotary Club invited me to accept a student award of some sort and to give a speech. I made an anti-Iraq war plea and closed with a Thich Nhat Hanh quote. And I got booed by the mayor of my town, along with some lawyers, judges, and other well-to-do folks. I also spent some time in detention for A, reading Pablo Neruda during math class, which I had an A in anyways, and which was very irritating to my teacher, and B, violating the no hat policy at my school, and sporting a rainbow beanie my mom had crocheted for me. On a less adorable note, by the time I got to the end of high school, I was regularly getting called a bitch and a feminazi by many of the boys in my honors classes that I had grown up alongside. Considering how tame my ideology was at that point, I can only imagine what they might think of me now. My Facebook perusing would lead me to believe that some of them have come around, thankfully. Through college, I clarified and expanded my beliefs. I got involved in and eventually took on leadership roles at a variety of social justice organizations. I really found my groove when I was exposed to the concept of direct action and the larger tenets of anarchist activism. I was so tired of talking about the problems and wanted to be a part of the solution. I was already a feminist in a women's and gender studies program, but I became one of the radicals of my already fringe program. I had never pictured myself as an anarchist. Aren't they scary, property-destructive lunatics in black masks? It turns out they are some of the smartest, fiercest, most loving people I know. And I owe so much to the people that taught me and took me in, especially the incredible indigenous activists in Flagstaff, Arizona, who were and are ceaselessly creative, determined, and downright fun. Many of my contributions to indie birth strategy, content, and joie de vivre are owed to the skills and confidence I gained in those formative years with those inspiring people. I was encouraged to question and rethink everything. I asked and was asked very uncomfortable questions and challenged beliefs that I had previously thought unquestionable. Why do we expect the government to provide anything for us? Are we not capable of supporting ourselves? If not alone, at least in strong, vibrant, healthy communities. There were people in my circles that were talking about reclaiming healthcare, learning about herbs, and practicing radical love and community care by sharing free food through groups like Food Not Bombs, which is one of the places where I got to know my now partner and the father of my child, now children. At the time of this book, there was only one. This all sounds very familiar, I bet. Very recently, I made a giant pot of kitchery to share with a group of pregnant women at one of my free events called Nourish Your Natural Pregnancy. I'll keep reading and I'll come back to that thought. A memory that bubbles to the surface when I think about what it means to me to be a rebel and for indie birth. As a rebel group, I remember being at a primitivist Skillshare in Colorado about 6 months before starting my midwifery apprenticeship. At that point, I didn't even really know what midwifery was. I was sitting with a group of mostly women. Some were nude, if memory serves me, on a big flat rock next to a river, and we talked about how to chart our cycles and how to use that information to prevent pregnancy. I had already been charting for a few months, but it was the first time I was able to talk about it with anyone else in person. I felt so obviously in the right place with the right people and talking about the right thing, women's health. This is where I was meant to be, and this was the work I was meant to do. I just didn't know that was possible yet. I wasn't leading the discussion on the rock, but realized I could have been since I had studied the heck out of taking charge of your fertility. Rejecting birth control pills was a big turning point in my life. In my medical records, the jerk of a nurse noted that I had, and this was in quotes, very set ideas and notions about what I was willing to do in regards to birth control and what it had done to my body. Spoiler alert, I still do. So a mixture of fertility charting and dabbling in herbs for my long-standing blood pressure issues is what sparked my interest in natural health and would be the foundation for my future love of midwifery. I loved the idea that I could heal myself and that I could prevent pregnancy completely on my own. I felt like I could do anything if I dug deep enough, learned from those who had paved the way, listened to the other rebels, and owned my own process. I have always loved proving people wrong about the limits of our own abilities. I have always enjoyed bucking the system when it didn't serve me, and I love pointing out stupid, non-effective approaches to getting shit done. Nothing brings me more joy than finding creative solutions to complex problems, especially if it disrupts the status quo in the process. So that's just a little, that's like 3 pages from our book, Indie Birth, A Story of Radical Birth Love, where we talk about birth stories, the story of how indie birth came to be, how it's changed and morphed, and then we have these little sort of mini sections where we expand upon a word that we feel like is at the heart of what we do here at Indie Birth. So I think it's a really fun book. Stephanie said, "Happy Sunday, Margo. Loved reading this. I remember exactly where I was." That's cool. Yeah, it was really fun to, put more of kind of the backstories out into the world. And I feel like that's what's been really fun lately with doing these, and also some of these like Clubhouse chats that we've done so far. And it's something that I'm endeavoring to do more on the podcast this year as well, because I think those stories just, connect us strongly and humanize the people behind the content that you're excited about. Which I guess leads me to, we did a fun Clubhouse room. We were in a Clubhouse room. I don't know what the lingo is yet. Merritt and I talked about stuff on Clubhouse this morning, specifically about like the word consent and what that means. So I'm not going to rehash all of that here, but I might turn some of those ideas into a blog post soon. And if you're not on Clubhouse and would like to be, just send me an email with your phone number and I will add you. And you have to have an iPhone. But the reason for that was, so here comes the storytelling, right? The reason for that was I talked with a woman at one of the local hospitals this week. She reached out to me just kind of to talk and pick my brain about specifically around the issues of consent in hospital birth, specifically in their hospital, and how to help them do a better job, and what areas I thought maybe needed the most improving. It was like a 50% helpful conversation. I think a lot of it, maybe she thought it was more helpful, but it's just interesting anytime you're talking with someone who has a fundamentally different view on the world. Like, I think it's a good thing. And I think it's important for us to be in communication with people who think differently. And I guess what's also really interesting is like, as sort of an outsider meaning like having kind of a non-status quo perspective on life, I feel like I completely can understand where she's coming from, and like I can see why some of the arguments she made come up for her and why they make sense to her. And as an outsider, it's not the same, right? So like she probably doesn't quite understand my perspective. as much as I can understand hers, since, we're all steeped in sort of the dominant perspective on things. So, things like, the fact that, water, they have these really giant tubs, like I would call them birth tubs or jacuzzi tubs in the rooms. They did this big remodel. And so women often are really attracted to that. And they say like, oh, well, this hospital redid their rooms. These tubs are amazing and gorgeous. Like, oh, I can't wait to labor those. That'll feel so good. Little do they know, like that they're not allowed to push their babies out in the pool. And that is very clear. And they actually now have a piece of paper that they make a person sign saying that they agree to get out before they push. And she said that was, I said, that seems problematic to me. And I think a lot of women really wish that they had that option. And she said, well, it's an insurance issue. They don't want to pay more to have the insurance that it would take to cover liability in the situation of water birth. So to her, like, that's a valid excuse. To me, that's like complete bullshit. And so it's really interesting to see how people kind of like rationalize and validate their own thought processes. And that's where having conversations with people who think differently can be really cool. So I think I'll follow up with her and just point out a few of those places and just, say, just wanting to like bring this up again, that like, I know that it seems like that's a valid reason or a valid excuse, but like, that's actually not okay. So, similarly, another one of those examples is like, if somebody needs to have a cesarean or chooses to have a cesarean, nobody's allowed to go in with her while she gets prepped. So the partner can't go in while she's getting the epidural. And to them, it makes perfect sense. It's a liability. They need their staff to be able to focus and do a good job, obviously, with placing the pain meds and everything. But for the experience of the woman, like that is often one of the most traumatic parts of people's stories when they've shared that with me. And so I shared that with her and she said, well, we just can't. It's like, well, you can, you're choosing not to. It's not impossible. And it's something that, you could look at. It's Russell trying to call me. So anyways, I've just been feeling, so last Sunday was my birthday. It was really fun. That's why I wasn't on here, which I meant to give you all a heads up, but I was having too much fun. So I got to do a bunch of fun things, go out to brunch, hang out with my kids, went to the movies. It was great. And then this last week, I've been just sort of like in this interesting, I'd call it like the void or something, where I feel like I can sense that there's all these big changes coming and these really cool possibilities. And I feel like I'm just trying to hone in better on how to keep going that direction. So we're at this really neat place with Indie Birth right now where things feel to me really stable. We have all these really great courses and programs. We have tons of people interested and excited about our work. We've got the book, we've got podcasts, like we've got it all. And there's this feeling of like, well, what's next? And what am I most excited to do in this next phase, whatever that looks like? And let's see. I don't know what you mean, Stephanie, by what did you see? Maybe you can ask me. Was it a question for me? I'd love to to clarify. Or maybe I was like looking off into the distance. I don't know. But so I'm really excited. This has come up a few times. Marin said it. I said it on Friday to a group of doula students, like just this feeling. Oh, what did I see? The movie. Sorry, there's like a lag with the chat. We saw Tom and Jerry, me and my daughter. It was okay. It was not great, but it was really fun to go with her. So yeah, Marin and I both have said something to the effect of like, our work has so far been in birth and helping women like reclaim their power and show them that they can and kind of show them the way. But I feel like I'm being sort of called to extend beyond birth and just speak more directly to women in general, not just in the birth process, but also young girls. I don't know, it's just feeling really exciting, and especially helping people with business stuff. So that's kind of what's brewing this year. And also just re-radicalizing, or like, we use the word radical a lot, and that's where my roots are, like I shared at the beginning of this. But, you know, I've had 2 kids and did a midwifery apprenticeship, and I've started a business, and, you know, arguably 2 businesses, and it's just been a lot in the last decade. And so I've sort of lost touch with some of those roots. And I'm feeling like now is the time where like there's this stability that I've created and built alongside Mirren that makes it feel more like I can look out again to the world and kind of remember some of those, my anarchist roots, and figure out how to incorporate that more into both my work locally here in Duluth and then also on the bigger scale. So someone on our platform the other day recommended a podcast that I have not gotten to listen all the way to yet, but it looked really cool. It's called Against Everyone by Connor Habib. So I might put that in the newsletter this week after I listen to the whole episode. But I listened to the beginning, and it just got me like super excited and pumped, and just like saying like, hell yes. And just, feeling excited about other people out there in the world having these cool ideas, especially around, you know, radical self-responsibility, and how can that look, and how can we build the capacity in our own communities to really serve each other and show up for each other. And it's really exciting. So that's one thing that I've been really stoked about, is that podcast. I'm still listening to The Fifth Sacred Thing again on audiobook. That's been a thing. Can you turn it down, Celicia? Thank you. What's the other thing? Oh, I wanted to show you something. Hold on. Samantha said there's a great one by him on mutual aid too. Yeah, that I also had my eye on. I think it was the episode right before. So that's a great term. And so that's a good example of like, you know, I used to talk about mutual aid all the time back in my activism days. And somehow like that terminology just like fell out of use for me. And I just hadn't been around people that were doing that kind of work. And so, you know, just like re-sparking, I guess it's not re-sparking, reigniting, I don't know, like my interests and re-exploring, I guess, some of the tools that I used to find really exciting, and thinking now about how to apply them more to midwifery and beyond. What other cool stuff do we have in the chat here? Cool. So I wanted to show you all this. This is not an oracle deck. This is just a deck of cards called the Fair Play deck. And I might have mentioned that on here a few times, but the book, that is. And I have the book, which is also great. And I think they have like a printout, so you can print a version of these and cut them out, which we did a couple years ago, the first time we did this practice. And Lauren, mutual aid is just kind of like what it sounds like. I mean, I don't know that I can wax poetic about it, but just the idea that we will all mutually assist each other as opposed and outside of state-based structures. Hope that makes sense. So like I said, the book, you can print it out, you can cut them out, but I hadn't seen these before. And then a friend of mine who I had mentioned the book to was like, is this what you were talking about? She sent me a link for the deck. So this is new since I had first read it. And I pretty much instantaneously bought it so that Russell and I could do it again, and so that I have it to loan out to clients. So it'll be part of my lending library, because I think it's an imperfect tool, but it's really a cool tool. And so, you know, on the back it says these game-changing cards will help you and your partner rebalance your household based on your family's needs, reignite your relationship, rediscover the passions that bring you joy. And there's 102 different cards, and there's like an instruction pamphlet in here. So I'll just show you some of them. I have them kind of separated out at the moment because because we did it the other day. So I think this is, so this one says like meals, kids, school, lunch. They're all like really cute. Okay, hold on one moment. I'm gonna answer the phone. Hey, I'm doing my live. It's fine, but if he wakes up, it might be a problem. But it's fine. You can keep chainsawing. Russell forgot. All right, Russell. Here's another one in potty training. So they all have these like very specific things. Not all of them will, apply to every relationship. And so you just discard the ones that don't fit first. And then with the deck you have left, you just go card by card and talk about whose card it is. So that's the simple version. There's some other like rules she has that help kind of guide the conversation. And then in the end, the goal is not to have an equal amount of cards in each deck. It's just that you both feel good about the cards that you have and feel like you're able to deliver on what is expected of you in the relationship. I've also found it really helpful. We just did it again last week, a couple days ago, something like that. And it was helpful in that it reminded me of some things that I had said are my thing, or like that I think of as my thing, but I just haven't thought of it in a long time. So it was also just a really, and it reminded Russell of some things too. So he's, for example, got the auto card. He's the car guy. Not that he's like a car guy, but if a car thing comes up, it's his. And then her whole point is you can also reshuffle and like redelegate things as you go, but this is just like a clear way to communicate at any given time. So it's not like you have to hold them forever. And she actually recommends switching them up now and then. But so if something comes up with the car, it's his deal. So as we were doing this, he said like, oh, with the car, like the regular appointments. And I was like, when do we have an appointment? And he realized he needed to call and make one. So it's also a really nice way to remind you of what's up. It'd be really fun to kind of like, once you have your decks, have each person write them out and have it up somewhere for you to look at and see. So that's kind of next on my list if I can get sort of crafty. So highly recommend checking it out, especially having it in your library if you're working with couples, because it's super useful. And I guess the only other thing I wanted to say before I pull some cards from my new deck that Marin sent me for my birthday would be that I woke up super early this morning, like at 4 a.m. That's a thing now. I also went to bed though at like 7:30 or 8. So Arrow wakes up once to nurse. He wakes up more than once, but he wakes up once to nurse. It's usually around 4. Had been around 5, but it's moved back. And it used to be that I couldn't leave the room or he'd wake up. But now if I leave the room after we nurse, he doesn't wake up till 6 or whatever. So I woke up really early today and felt inspired to write. And so you'll see that probably soon. I have a blog post I wrote this morning about sort of how we do the deck, the fair play deck at our house, because we get asked all the time, what does that look like and how do you kind of like get it all done? And I had posted something over on the social platform that Ashley had recommended to me, an article. It's called like The Self-Made Millionaire and the Help I Have at Home or something like that, where she talks about how she delegates tasks and who she has in her home for help and support. And so I wanted to make something kind of similar. And the reason is I was with a client the other day, and anyways, it's a long story how it came up, but I said the sentence, I haven't done dishes in years. And everyone in the room looked like sort of shocked. And I wasn't exaggerating. Like, I mean, I occasionally will unload the dishwasher, and I've maybe loaded it a couple times in the last few years, but like that's Russell's job that he is cool with having. So it was really, it reminded me how unusual that is. And so I wanted to kind of write out the story of how we went from Russell worked full-time at a job he hated, and the goal was for me to bring in the income so he wouldn't have to do that anymore. And then he could either find a job he liked or be at home chainsawing. And so yeah, so I'm going to kind of chronicle that. But part of it is that he had to do the stuff that I had been doing, or like he had to take on more of the house stuff so that I could do more of the out of the house stuff. And cool, Jenny said, I don't do the dishes either. It's my husband's job. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of like lay out a map, because I mean, we get asked it all the time. And especially we hear from women who are like, I want to be a doula, I want to be a midwife, but I don't have childcare, or I don't have enough help, or I feel overwhelmed with homeschooling, or this or this or that. And it's like, yeah, like we can't do everything. And so we have to figure out what we want to do. And then there are creative ways to do all of it. So the fair play deck, I think, is really helpful with that. So like many people, I suspect, maybe not everyone, but I have friends who've said this feels similar in their house. Russell does a lot of like the tasks, like task-oriented things, like laundry, dishes, and he actually does a lot of the cooking, most of the cooking. Whereas I kind of do the planning for the meals, and I'll like grocery shop online, like I'll put together the cart and buy it, and sometimes pick it up. Sometimes he'll pick it up. I do a lot more of like the mental tasks, like the organizing, kind of like mental processes. And I also do a lot more of like the emotional stuff with the kids. And a lot more of like she has them divided up into different categories. So there's like the magic cards. So things like, hi, Celestia. Things like, I'm trying to think of one that I can say in front of Celosia. Oh, well, that's one, marriage and romance. But just like the kind of like extra magic things in life. I do a lot of those. That falls on my shoulders. Cool. Thanks, Samantha. That is a good quote, huh? I said that. Cool. So I'm going to pull a card from this really beautiful deck that Marin sent me. And I guess sort of the question that I'm asking the deck is going to be what? What is it going to be? If anybody has a question they want me to sort of use for this, I'm happy to do more than one too. But I guess for me, the question that's feeling front of mind is how to sort of what direction to go next with the work that I'm doing in general, like kind of what's next, because there's a lot of things that are feeling like not quite right. And then there's a couple of things that are feeling kind of right. But I guess I would love some thoughts on where to go next. And I'm imagining that will also be pretty applicable to people who are watching this. If you're doing birth work as well, or if you're in the phase of life where you're birthing something, kind of like, yeah, how to flow easily to the next place we're all supposed to be. So I'm going to pull a card, and I really haven't used these much yet. Oh, well then. This feels very appropriate for how I've been feeling this week. So something I like about this deck, which is called the Roots and Wings Oracle deck. She did all the art. It's really beautiful. So I got the Death card, actually, which is kind of cool. And something I like, that's what I was going to say, something I like is that the descriptions of the cards are really short. So there's not a lot of like, waxing on about what the card is supposed to mean. It's like kind of short, and then it leaves a lot more open to interpretation. But I'll read it and then I'll interpret. So death, not to be feared. This is about closure, putting something or someone to rest in your life. A big change and shift, letting go of what is holding you back. And this week I've felt like laying in the dark or something, which I've gotten to do a little bit here and there, but mostly, life with kids is not amenable to that. So that card feels really appropriate. It feels like something is over. I just don't quite know what it is yet. Part of what I'm working on is trying to figure out a way to work with clients one-on-one in a way that feels better to me. Like I really love it. I enjoy it. And it's always really fun to sit down with people prenatally and in the postpartum too, but I mostly do prenatals. But it's felt like there's been something missing. And so I've been exploring what that means to me and trying to figure out like how to sort of bring all of myself to my work as a midwife and not leave parts of myself out. So there are some things that I've been adding to my website, and I'm still trying to figure out how they look in actual practice, one-on-one. Something else that's really new is, of course, that I'm using my office space instead of going to people's houses for the most part. And something else new is that I'm going to be offering, I think in April, a desire map retreat for my clients, and not to talk about their birth necessarily, but just to talk about their life as women. And so that's what I would say I'm feeling like I'm missing the most is, yes, we talk about how they're eating and drinking and sleeping and what their partnership is like, and we get into some of the emotional stuff, and I make space for spiritual stuff too. But all of it kind of revolves around the pregnancy and the birth. And so when I'm working with these women, yes, that's like the biggest thing in their life, but that isn't the only thing in their life. And I feel like I have a lot more to offer beyond just the birth stuff. So I guess that's the part of me that's dying, is, just sort of moving into this new way of midwifery that I still don't quite know what the template is for that. Like I'm imagining doing more like painting with people and pulling cards, and we're offering something that's cool is a former client of mine is offering a really lovely prenatal yoga class for my clients on the 20th. So that's new. Another really lovely former client of mine is offering a class in my space. The yoga's in my space too. But they're a former client and her partner are offering a partner class here this week. So I think just getting some like fresh energy in and trying to figure out what parts need to be done and move on from. One of which is filling out birth certificates. I don't like it. Getting hassled by the state afterwards for follow-up, not into it. So there's things like that that are just feeling like they need to be probably done. So maybe saying that out loud on YouTube will make it so. Did anybody else want me to pull a card for some reason that could be interesting to them? Feel free to post it. Kind of wanted to show you other ones, so I'd love an excuse to. They're like really, really pretty. And they feel like really soft and cool. This is the moon card. Sort of prettier in person too. Since it's guarded. Cool. Well, if no one has a question, I'll wait another moment. Maybe I'll show you a couple more. Ooh, I like this one a lot, the world. If no one has a question though, I think I'm gonna probably sign off. Ooh, okay. Cool. Samantha says, pull a card for me moving forward in my biz. Sweet. I'll do my best to interpret and say what I think, but I'd also love to hear what you think of what I pull. All right, so this one's for Samantha. Moving forward in her business. Okay. Let's see what we get. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's funny. It's one of them that I showed a moment ago. It says guarded. It's got like blue, pretty dots. And a blue eye in her palm. So, let's see. Her little tidbit about this card says, perhaps you need to guard and protect your heart, something you are working on, or a relationship. Perhaps someone else needs you to help them feel safe and secure. Guard something you are working What do you think about that, Samantha? I also really like the spread that she recommends doing. So this was just the one, obviously, but she has this really fun spread that I found really helpful the other day. And you could totally do with other decks too, but it's this like spread where you do like the seed, the soil, the sun, the water, and the weed, which just lends extra layers to interpretation. Do you feel like you're guarding something about your business, Samantha? So this is when it'd be fun to be on Clubhouse, because then you could just talk back to me. That's interesting. I am still in a budding process of coming up with how to brand myself. Also in a community of highly political midwives who I don't know if I fit in with exactly. Yeah, that was sort of like my initial feeling, is that, so many of us who do birth work, especially kind of outside the status quo or out of the box, can feel really guarded about what we do. And so I guess I would interpret that as an invitation to like find a way to open up more in ways that still feel safe. Yeah. Cool. I'm trying to think where you're at in the program, Samantha. Sometimes I forget. You have not done the business class yet, correct? For the midwifery school. Marin reminded me too that one of the reasons we do these calls is to, you're ending the first year. Yeah, that's what I thought. So too much about branding unless you really, really want to right now. But we're going to talk a lot about it in the second year. So, where's I going with that? Oh, just that she reminded me that one of the points of doing these calls is to connect with people that we like, of course, like all of you, but also to talk about our midwifery school and other things we offer. So if people have questions, I'm always happy to answer them. Yeah, Jenny, I'll pull one for you. Do you have a specific question, or you just want it to be general? Our next Clubhouse is going to be on Tuesday at, I believe, 4:30, but let me look. I'll wait in case Jenny had a specific question. I'm going to check that. Clubhouse on, I might have to look on my phone, actually. I don't think I put it on the calendar yet. Silly me. So me and Marin are going to talk on Tuesday at 4:30 Central, I was right, about why midwifery is broken and licensure and that kind of thing. Okay, Jenny said general life management. All right. Pull a life management card for you. Let's see what it says. Okay. Cool. Got this card. It says wisdom. And it has this sort of light greenish, grayish owl. So let's see what she says. I mean, I think we know what wisdom is, right? But life management. You have the knowledge to exercise good judgment, trust yourself, think through the situation, even if through the night, like the owl. Have you been staying up? I mean, you are apprentice midwife. So perhaps you're doing some middle of the night thinking. But yeah, trust yourself. I wonder if there's something that pops up for you as the thing that you have been thinking about doing to manage your life and just haven't yet because you didn't fully trust it. I'd be curious what you think. Victoria, you do need an invite and you need an iPhone. And if you'd like me to invite you, just email me, margo@indiebirth.org. Email me with your phone number in the message, and I can add you. I think I've got a couple invites at the moment to spare. So what do you think, Jenny? Here it was at. So after I hear from Jenny, if you want to write back, then I will be saying my goodbyes. But marinate on it. Report back. Let me know. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for hanging out. Check us out on Clubhouse on Tuesday if you can. And yeah, have a good week, everyone. I'm going to send out another fun newsletter either today or tomorrow, depending on how these children shake out today. All right. Thanks, everyone.